You know, we've never had an official Triceratops Pokemon yet. Oh, but Henry, you just showed 4 Pokemon that are Triceratops Pokemon. Aggron has design elements relating to Triceratops, specifically the horns and partly the mouth. But it mainly takes inspiration from theropods and kaiju considering its body type. Plus, it and its evolution line are not fossil Pokemon. Shieldon and Bastiodon are based on Ceratopsians, but not Triceratops. They are actually based on the Protoceratops, an older Ceratopsian that predates Triceratops. And then there's Gouging Fire, which is a bit of a mix. It is primarily based on the Ceratopsian Styracosaurus, a Ceratopsian with horns too, but the horns are more spread out and varied compared to Triceratops. But it's also an Entei, making it part lion, and maybe Stegoceratops from Jurassic World the game. But regardless of its inspirations, Gouging Fire is not a fossil Pokemon in the main Pokemon universe. It's a Paradox Pokemon, and Paradox Pokemon magazine and dex entries need to be taken with grains of salt. But maybe it was in its universe, but that wouldn't make sense with the theory I have for the Scarlet universe. I'm getting off topic. I have extensive theories on what the hell is going on with the Scarlet and Violet Paradox Pokemon, but I'm not going to get into it in this video. But back to the main point. Because we don't have an official Triceratops Pokemon yet, I decided to make my own. So meet Cerapike and Joustops, the Little Horn and the 3 Steel Horn Pokemon. Yes, already, they are based on Knights, Pikes, Lances, and Jousting. It's also obvious that I'm going for the low-hanging fruit when it comes to Cerapike and Joustops' inspirations. I know I said I wouldn't in a previous video, but those inspirations make the most sense for a Triceratops Pokemon. That, and a few other reasons. In order to differentiate the design inspirations between my carnivore fossil Pokemon and my herbivore fossil Pokemon, I've thought about how Jurassic Park sets up its own thrills. In the movies and books, the interactions with dinosaurs can be summarized as this.
Oh yeah, that's how it always starts. But then later there's running and screaming.
Screaming usually starts with the carnivores, so I make the carnivore fossil Pokemon be based on horror subgenres and scary stories. But the part begins with the herbivores, so I make them be based on things from fantasy and mythology. This is why Cerapike and Joustops are based on knights and medieval weaponry. Knights and jousting were mainly recognized to be a part of medieval times, and the inspiration from knights results in their secondary typing being steel type. Their first typing, of course, being rock type, as they are fossil Pokemon. This also shows the relationship to Shieldon and Bastiodon, as the Shieldon line are based on shields and bastions, things that knights would use to defend themselves or take covering. And they are related in lore, in a sort of Seismitoad and Toxicroak way. The Shieldon line and Cerapike line also complement each other, with Shieldon and Bastiodon being more defensive, while Cerapike and Joustops being more offensive. To see that better, let's look at Cerapike's design, abilities, and behavior first. Then once we're done, we'll look at Joustops. Cerapike has been observed using its metal horns to ram into random objects for practice. It seems to do this in preparation for a competitive game it has with other Cerapike. The first part of Cerapike's dex entry is just a description of practice. I mean, people who used pikes and lances needed to practice before using their weapons in like an actual competition or before fighting something. The mention of a competitive game is a nod to how jousting matches were competitive games to show off, among other things. And Triceratops did similar things with its horns. For this reasoning, I gave Cerapike the ability Rockhead and Sturdy, with its hidden ability being Heavy Metal. Rockhead makes the user immune to hurting itself from moves like Double Edge and Wild Charge, a useful ability for a Pokemon ramming its head into everything for practice, and for competitions. Sturdy is an ability that prevents the user from being KO'd with one hit, a common ability for many rock types, and the ability of Bastiodon and Shieldon. Triceratops was also pretty defensive itself, so, having that ability is a reflection of that. And as for heavy metal, well, that armor it has on its body is not light. I designed Cerapike. I wanted to pull inspiration from Shieldon, as I wanted them to share similar design elements. But the differences they have are great. Cerapike's skull, for starters, is meant to appear more like a knight's helmet crossed with a Triceratops skull, rather than a shield or a football helmet like Shieldon's head. The legs of Cerapike are inspired by knight armor, and they are very much different from Shieldon's legs. And as opposed to the one osteoderm Shieldon has on its back, Cerapike has a pair of 3 osteoderms on each side of its back. And the osteoderms are just metal osteoderms. It's probably the weakest part of Cerapike's design. But the way I made the horns is why I named Cerapike Cerapike. It's not after the fish, it's after the weapon. Pikes were long spears used to thrust into enemies during the Middle Ages. I imagine that if you took 2 pikes, then melted them together at an angle, you would get something resembling a Triceratops' face. Is it a stretch? Yes. But is it how I came up with this design? Also yes. This is why Cerapike's horns look the way it does instead of how a regular Triceratops horns would. But the red band wrapped around those horns are in reference to jousting lances and how they are sometimes portrayed with having a pattern of sorts wrapped around the stock of the lance. These patterns on the lance exist to distinguish the holder from other lance wielders. This is why when it evolves into Joustops, this pattern becomes even more apparent, as well as the rest of its colors being more vibrant. The red on its crest is meant to reference how Triceratops may have had more colorful patterns on its crest, but because in Jurassic Park, Triceratops didn't have these due to frog DNA, I wanted to reflect that in Joustops by making it just only be red. Something that I added from knight helmets onto Joustops' skull is the face guard that knights have on their helmets. While this feature doesn't fully shield the eyes of Joustops, it is still a representative of those face guards. Other features that changed in evolution are the boots. They have changed to accommodate for Joustops' larger feet. As for abilities, it retains its first ability, Rockhead, and its hidden ability, Heavy Metal. But it trades Sturdy for a new ability I call Piercing Horns. Piercing Horns allows for moves that involve ramming a pointed object into the opponent, like Smart Strike, Mega Horn, Poison Jab, and others, to have a heightened chance of landing a critical hit. And added with its signature move, Tri-Lance, this Pokemon just became a threat in the battlefield. A steel physical move, Tri-Lance does 120 damage and has an accuracy of 70. The user runs at the target at full speed and rams their 3 horns into the target. If the move misses, this will cause serious damage to the user. If both user and the opponent use Tri-Lance during the same round, the Pokemon with the faster speed will KO the target. However, if that Pokemon misses and the opponent lands the attack, the user will faint. Now, that definition is obviously referencing jousting matches, but it's also a reference to how brutal Triceratops can be with each other. Triceratops fossils have been found with damage caused by other Triceratops' horns from fights. Some of them to even make out of those fights alive. The animation I just showed for Tri-Lance is Joustops' in-lore behavior too, with other Joustops. As just as speculated with Triceratops, Joustops defend their territory and compete for mates with their horns. But get this, I have more info about Joustops to share with you all. Fossils of Joustops have been found with bite marks belonging to Tyrantrum. But unsurprisingly, fossils of Tyrant and Tyrantrum have been found with puncture holes from Joustops' horns. Now, while this does seem like it's my way of saying that,
T-Rex and Triceratops fought each other in the Cretaceous period and are super freaking cool, dudes.
there is more reasoning to this. The inclusion of Tyrantrum and Joustops fighting each other is not only a reference to prehistory with Tyrannosaurus Rex and Triceratops, but to the current history with kings and jousting. Specifically with one king in particular, King Henry II of France. You see, King Henry II used to participate in jousting matches. I say used to, as during a tournament, King Henry II would receive a fragment of a splintered lance in his eye. He would get infected, and he passed away because it was 1559 and healthcare was terrible back then. Even for kings. And because of his jousting-related demise, jousting slowly stopped being a sport in France. Now, why is this significant? Tyrantrum is based on kings. If that weren't obvious with its coat of feathers resembling the robe of a king, or the fact its crest is resembling a crown. Also, it's the Despot Pokemon, and a Despot is a ruler that holds absolute power oppressively. Tyrantrum was introduced in Generation 6 in the Kalos region. The Kalos region is based on France. So, making a Triceratops Pokemon based on jousting have a rivalry with a Tyrannosaurus Rex Pokemon that is based on kings is perfect, given that the death of King Henry II was caused by a jousting accident, and his death led to the demise of jousting in France. With that said, what do you guys think of Cerapike and Joustops? I think that they're pretty cool. Don't forget to like, leave a comment if you want to, and follow me if you haven't already. And if you've done all of that, goodbye!